What's up, everybody? It is September 14th of 2025, and what a week in the world of news it was. Headlined by the political assassination of conservative Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk. We have a lot to get into today, and normally I like to do these videos a little bit sooner, but as circumstances have surrounding me, I've been a little late to the party. Now, recently I was on Cody's channel, and we did a video together along with AJ of Ball Don't Lie. This channel is linked down below in the description, and some of the credit goes to him for some of the finds in this video. I also have a link to Joseph Aquaviva's channel, who did some pretty good work on the numbers 666 and 33, numbers that will be of strong focus in this video. So check those out if you haven't. Today, we're going to look over the big picture, a number of riddles about the numerology of this news story. So Charlie Kirk was the co-founder of Turning Point USA, a right-wing organization that helped shape the youth's viewpoint on politics, leading to Donald Trump getting elected to office. Now, Charlie Kirk was first noticed at a pretty young age. He was only 18 when he founded this organization, and it was with the help of another activist named Bill Montgomery. And we'll talk about this guy a little bit. You may notice that he was born on May 29th, which is the birthday of JFK, one of the 4 assassinated presidents, and certainly the most famous president to be assassinated, also the most recent. Montgomery was also born in the city of Lincoln, Nebraska. And of course, Abraham Lincoln, the first president to be assassinated. Bill Montgomery died in 2020, reportedly of the CV-19 bug. And that itself was a strange story because Turning Point USA was mocking mask wearing and ended up deleting a tweet that they had made after Bill Montgomery died. So there's a lot of strange things surrounding him. Another big topic of this video is how it connects to the church code. Now, the last name Kirk literally translates to church. Charlie was shot in Orem, Utah, and the city of Orem has the same 4 letters as Rome. In fact, Orem has a neighboring city called Provo. And if you zoom in on Provo, you'll even see there's a neighborhood there called Provost. This connects Charlie to the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, whose birthday is today, September 14th. And his last name is Prevost, which means selected to lead. Now, of course, Pope Leo is the first pope to be from America, as he was born in the Chicagoland area. Well, so was Charlie Kirk, born in Arlington Heights, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. This past week on Monday Night Football, the Chicago Bears lost a heartbreaking game to the Minnesota Vikings. And it just so happens that the second-to-last video Kirk made was about the Chicago Bears, who entered the season, by the way, with 666 total losses in the history of their franchise, including playoffs. So this story is heavily connected to the Pope. In fact, if you measure between their birthdays, Pope Leo to Charlie Kirk, you get exactly 457 months, as they were both born on the 14th day of the month. 457 is the 88th prime number. And this is a huge number to what we'll be discussing today, as the city of Chicago sits alongside the 88th Western Meridian. Now, on this map, you'll also notice another major city on the 88th meridian is my hometown of Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is where the Republican National Convention was held in 2024, leading up to Trump's second election. On September 11th, just one day after the assassination, and the same day that the shooter was captured, Donald Trump approved FEMA funds for victims of the Milwaukee flooding on August 10th, which means I might actually be getting some federal aid for the damage to my basement. I'm still not living at home, which is why the sound quality might be a little bit lower today. I'm using a different headset as opposed to trying to hold that microphone up to my face for another hour. And I'm getting old. My elbow hurt for a couple days after the last hour-long stream I made. But hopefully I'll be back home by the end of the month. Things will be a little bit back to normal. Now, earlier this week, week 2 of the NFL opened up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, with a matchup between the Packers and the Commanders. And this was a rematch of the first game that was played after the September 11th attacks. And we'll talk about this later, but a player named Austin Ekeler tore his Achilles in the fourth quarter of this game. And this reminded me of the fact that Aaron Rodgers, in his first game away from the Packers, tore his Achilles on September 11th, the same date Austin Ekeler did. So there's certainly more to unpack there. We'll also be talking about how this connects to the code of lunar eclipses. When Turning Point USA was founded all the way back in the year 2012, this was just one day after a lunar eclipse on June 4th, which happened to be my birthday. The shooting of Charlie Kirk occurred 3 days after another total lunar eclipse that occurred on September 7th last week. And of course, Kirk dead 3 days later. A lot of Christians believe that Jesus was crucified on the date of a lunar eclipse and then rose from the grave 3 days later. And of course, Charlie Kirk, a conservative Christian, a lot of people saying that he is now with Jesus in heaven. Another huge topic of this decode will be the skull and bones riddle. Very important to what we'll be looking at. And it all runs through this Orem, Utah temple that was recently built. And this temple sits right on the other side of the interchange from Utah Valley University, where Charlie Kirk was shot. And this temple, as soon as I saw images of this thing, I knew there was going to be a strong numerical riddle. It broke ground in 2020 and was opened up in 2023. First things first, however, let's talk about the number in the headline. Charlie Kirk dead at the age of 31. The organization he founded, abbreviated TPUSA, equals 31. And it said that he was a fearless activist. Notice how the words fearless and activist both equal 31. But what does this all trace back to? Back on September 10th of the year 1419, way back in history, the same date as the Charlie Kirk assassination, John the Fearless was assassinated. This was a French scion who ruled as the Duke of Burgundy. And Charlie Kirk died exactly 606 years after John the Fearless. Now, don't forget, John is the name of the author of the book of Revelation, which is the 66th book of the Bible. And in the reduction forms of Gematria, John the Fearless equals 66, as does Duke of Burgundy. If you happen to be new here, Gematria is the main numerical key that we use to decode these events, all based in the alphabetic order, and of course the reverse order, where Z is 1 and A is 26. Charlie's organization Turning Point sums to 66. And when Kirk was shot, allegedly, his shirt simply said freedom, which equals 66. Now, this also stands out because the name Charlie means free man. Just going to bring this up for you here. The name Charles means free man in its Germanic origins. Charlie Kirk's wife's maiden name was Fransvi, which also means free man. And I mean, what are the odds of that, right? And he dies while wearing a shirt that says freedom on it. Charlie was killed in the city of Orem, Utah, which in the Sumerian cipher, the alphabetic order times 6, equals 606. In fact, the word church has reverse Sumerian gematria, 606. And measuring from the date of groundbreaking for the Orem, Utah temple, which occurred back in September of 2020, we find that Charlie Kirk's killing was a span of 60 months and 6 days later. We'll talk more about that measurement as it also connects to skull and bones. But another important element of this decode is that John the Fearless was the Duke of Burgundy. This means he ruled over the Burgundian Netherlands. And it does appear as if I'm having some internet difficulties, so if I dip out, someone please let me know in the chat. So this guy, John the Fearless, was the ruler of the modern-day Netherlands. And this is really important, actually, because the weekend before the assassination, Max Verstappen, the only F1 race winner to ever come from the Netherlands, picked up his 66th career victory at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, surprising the two McLaren drivers. And I apologize for the rough internet. Again, I'm not in my usual home. But the number 66 was littered all over this event. It was the Italian Grand Prix. The word Italian equals 66. The last video on my channel discusses the death of Italian designer Giorgio Armani. And the race is held every year in Monza, which is a city that has gematria of 66. Again, Verstappen got his 66th win by topping the McLaren drivers. McLaren equals 66, just like Max Verstappen with the S exception. Verstappen's teammate, Yuki, his name equals 66, and Yuki finished 12th in this race, which is, of course, 6 plus 6. Before the race even began, one driver had to retire from the race due to a hydraulic issue. And that was a driver from Sauber, Nico Hulkenberg. Notice how Sauber equals 66 ordinal. Hydraulic issue, 66 in reduction. And again, this was all on the same day as a lunar eclipse. Both lunar and eclipse with gematria of 66. Verstappen was even 116 mercurial years old, and 66 is 11 times 6. That was his exact age. And Mercury is indeed an important element to this decode. The word Dutchman also equals 606. And the number 66 is, of course, shorthand for the number of the beast, which equals 66 in reduction, as do a number of other phrases in that same Bible verse. John the Fearless was also known as John the First. Using square numbers, John the First equals 666. In Satanic Gematria, a cipher which is constructed specially around the number 666, the name Fearless Charlie is 666. And Kirk was killed 6 years and 66 days after the debut of the Charlie Kirk Show. It was also exactly 666 mercurial orbits after the shooting of Abraham Lincoln that led to his death the following day. There's another strong Charlie link to all of this, and it's interesting because one of the most recent videos I did, also about a Formula One race, talked a lot about how it was connected to King Charles, Charles Richter, the man that the Richter scale is named after, and also a driver named Charles Leclerc, who was taken out in this race. Check that video out if you haven't already. Well, Charlie was shot a span of 66 days before King Charles' birthday. And in Gematria, King, Charles, and Charles III all sum to 66. In fact, the assassination was also 666 days after King Charles' 2023 birthday. And that year, Charles turned 75 years old. Well, 75 is the gematria that Charlie Kirk shares with Tyler Robinson, the man who is now in custody for this shooting. The name Kirk also 75 with capital letters. But isn't it interesting that when you write out 666 and 666s, they also sum to 75. Of course, in the alphabetic order, these phrases both equal 156. And 156 is a very significant number to the 9/11 code. Kirk dead just one day before September 11th, the date that his shooter was captured. 156 is the 119th composite number, and the 156th prime number is 9/11. So this is a huge number for this story. The word eclipse in Hebrew sums to 156. This is because eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases apart. September 10th was a span of 156 days after the anniversary of last year's Great American Eclipse sweeping over the United States. And when you write out his name in ordinal and reduction, the two most basic methods, the name Charlie Kirk equals 105 and 60, reflecting these same digits. His wife's maiden name, a former Miss Arizona, also equals 156. When King Charles took the throne in 2022, Charlie Kirk was 10,556 days old. And he was shot dead 156 weeks later. Queen Elizabeth also shares this 66. Now, of course, 66 is the first multiple of 33, and this is another number that a lot of people are talking about in this story. As Charlie was shot in the neck, the word neck equals 33. And his assassin was captured 33 hours after the shooting, as the FBI made it very clear to everybody watching. The number 33 also equals 156 in ordinal. Well, notice how Charlie was shot a span of 3 years and 3 days after the death of Queen Elizabeth, when Charles became the king. 666 has matching 303 Gematria with Charlie James Kirk, and then Charles III, also 330, in another cipher of Gematria. More about how this is connected to the 9/11 code. Wednesday was a span of exactly 24 years after the September 11th attacks in the United States. This matches the reverse Gematria of John the Fearless, who Kirk was assassinated on the anniversary of. Duke of Burgundy, also 204. In the alphabetic order, John the Fearless has matching 165 Gematria with the phrase 9/11. And now the man arrested for the shooting is named Tyler Robinson, another 165. And of course, this number has the same digits as the 156 that we just dove into earlier. Scottish Rite and Freemasonry both sum to 165. And Charlie was shot in Orem, Utah. Orem and Utah both have Gematria of 165. On the date he allegedly died, Charlie was a span of exactly 1,665 weeks old, which is also 11,655 days. And don't you think it's a little bit curious that Kirk's death was announced by Donald Trump? You would think it would be like a medical, maybe a friend or a family member of Charlie, but no, it was the president. Well, Donald Trump was born on June 14th, which is the 165th day of the year. And Trump's full name also sums to the 165th. So this here demonstrates how the number of the beast was extremely important to this story, as it often is. You know, it's not like this is my only decode showing how the number 666 is attributed by the mainstream media. Next up, however, I want to look at how this is all synced up with this special church that was recently built, a new Mormon church just across the interstate from the fatal scene. Now, whether you use ordinal or standard English Gematria, notice how Mormon church has the same values as skull and bones. And it may seem a little bit strange to connect these institutions, but consider how the Mormon church traces back to the year 1830, whereas the Skull and Bone Society was formed just 2 years later, in 1832. Now, this means each of these organizations was founded 1 year away from 1831. And 1831 is the 282nd prime number. This matters because Yale University was founded on the 282nd day of the year. And think about how the date of Yale's founding connects to the date of Charlie's shooting. October 9th or 10/9. Wednesday was September 10th or 9/10. Of course, Skull and Bones founded at Yale University. And if you don't think numerology is important to this college, just consider that in the year 2023, Yale turned 322 years old. Skull and crossbones equals 223 in ordinal. And the fraternity is also known as Order 322. So there's more to this connection with the Catholic Church and the Mormon Church. Notice how the number 66 also shares Gematria with Skull and Bones and Mormon Church. This also links up in the reduction method. Both 66 and skull and bones equals 41. 66 is also the product of 3 times 22. And in standard English gematria, 66 sums to the same 4 digits as the founding year of Skull and Bones, once again, 1832. Skull and Bones is also known as the Brotherhood of Death. The Brotherhood of Death sums to 724 in the ultra-significant Latin or Agrippa's key cipher. This is the same as Number of the Beast. And if you instead look at the base 4 methods in the alphabetic order that we reviewed earlier, if you add up Brotherhood of Death in all 4 of these ciphers, you get a sum of 666. So I don't believe any of this is coincidental. This is very intentional coding by the powers that be. And again, this isn't to say that Skull and Bones or the Mormon Church had anything to do with the killing, but it is the numerology that is being attributed. And it all has to do with the mathematics of the circle, which is the basis of the language. Consider how 223 and 322 both sum to 314 in the alphabetic order, the first 2 numbers to do so. And in reverse gematria, when you write out circle, it sums to 223 and 322. So those of you familiar with my work know a lot about these numbers already. So let's explain how the Skull and Bones code was cemented into this Orem, Utah temple, probably about a kilometer from the scene of the shooting. The temple was first announced to be built on December 11th of 2019, when Charlie Kirk was 9,555 days old. The 555 connects to his gematria, Charlie James Kirk 555. When the church actually officially broke ground, once again, it was 60 months and 6 days before his death, syncing up with Orem, Utah, and church in Sumerian gematria. The shooting was also 1,832 days after that same date, which again is the founding year of the society. So when the church construction began, that same date, September 5th of 2020, Charlie Kirk was 322 months and 23 days old. So here we have a 322 and a 223. Now, once again, in the year 2023, in October, Yale turned 322 years old. And in that same very month, October of 2023, is when the Orem, Utah temple started accepting visitors. Charlie was shot 1 year, 322 days later. But this also all circles back to the number 31. When the temple first opened, Charlie was a span of 30 years and 10 days old. When the temple was dedicated, the following year, January of 2024, he was 30 years, 100 days old. In fact, his shooting was also a span of 300 weeks and 1 day after the temple was first announced. Skull and Bones has matching 31 gematria with Fearless, Activist, and TP USA. And what's even more interesting is that the name Charlie James Kirk equals the 31st square number 961. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is all connected back to the Chicago Bears, Charlie's favorite football team. And earlier this year, the owner of the Chicago Bears, Virginia McCaskey, passed away. Charlie's death was a span of exactly 31 weeks later. The 31st prime number is 127. And Charlie died exactly 1,270 lunar phases after Virginia was born. Now, this number, 127, is also significant to this story because that is the current Brown lunation number, 1,270. Charlie was shot at Utah Valley University, which equals 127. And when he was shot, he was being asked about transgender mass shooters. Now, last month, there was a church shooting by a transgender person in Minneapolis, which equals 127. And that shooting was also during the same lunation number, 1270. And again, this is the 31st prime number, matching Charlie's age. When the Orem, Utah temple was dedicated, it was 19 months and 20 days before the assassination. As I commonly discuss, this is another huge Yale Skull and Bones number. Yale Skull and Bones, Secret Society, and Skull and Bones on its own all equal 192. Charlie's widow, Erica, was 1,920 weeks old when her husband was shot. The name Charlie Kirk has matching 192 gematria with the Mormons. Kirk's October 14th birthday is a span of 192 days after the founding date of the Mormon Church. In fact, the church was 163 years old when Kirk was born. That's the ordinal gematria of his full birth name, Charles James Kirk, 163 in ordinal. This 192 is also an important number to the eclipse code. Eclipse summing to 192. And next we'll look at how this all connects to the moon. The most significant cycle of the moon is called the Metonic cycle, which is a period of just about exactly 19 years that syncs up with 235 synodic months, or lunar phases. And the name Charlie Kirk has Latin gematria of that special 235. Notice how the word church sums to 911 in square number gematria. And this is, of course, an upside down 116. Well, when Turning Point USA was founded back in 2012, it was one day after a lunar eclipse during Brown lunation number 06. With the zero dropped, as we customarily do in numerology, this is the number 116. Execution equals 116. Charlie's X handle was Charlie Kirk 11, which is also 116, killed at Utah Valley University, which also has that number. And of course, the city of Orem, just like the city of Rome, has matching gematria with moon in 3 of the 4 base ciphers. And as I pointed out at the top of this video, there's something up with this guy that Charlie co-founded Turning Point with. Bill Montgomery, who has the same birthday as JFK and was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. giving him direct links to 2 assassinated presidents. Montgomery was born exactly 23 years after JFK, and total lunar eclipse equals 203 in ordinal. In ancient Hebrew, total lunar eclipse equals 445. Charlie Kirk was shot exactly 4,450 weeks after the birth of Bill Montgomery. Of course, there's more. The word moon sums to 15 in multiple reverse methods. Charlie Kirk was shot right next to I-15, the interstate, and it was 105 days after the birthday of his business partner. In the alphabetic order, both Charlie Kirk and Blood Moon equals 105. Really sorry about the sound, guys. There's not much I can do with it right now. Bears owner Virginia McCaskey was born on 105 as well, January 5th. And speaking of the Chicago Bears, let's quickly take a look at some of the numerology connecting Kirk to the Chicago Bears. Now, again, the Bears opened the NFL season this year against the Minnesota Vikings from Minneapolis. And Minneapolis is where we had the church or Kirk shooting during the same lunation as Charlie's assassination. Now, the Bears entered this season with a total of 666 losses in franchise history. Chicago is home to the 60606 zip code. With the Bears' loss, this means they still are stuck on 798 wins all time. Mercury equals 798, so does astrology. And after President Lincoln was shot. Now, Charlie Kirk was also killed on Donald Trump's mercurial anniversary. Exactly 329 orbits of Mercury after the president was born. In the reverse alphabetic order, ritual human sacrifice equals 329. Now, back in 2014, Charlie Kirk made a very intriguing tweet asking if he just got shot by an AR-15. This was 11 years and 80 days before he was actually shot, which is a number of both death and homicide, 118. The Chicago Bears now have 647 losses during the regular season, which is the 118th prime number. Remember, this is all synced up to John the Fearless, which equals 1108 in the same Latin cipher. Well, another 118 in Latin is Evergreen High School. And on the exact same day as the shooting at Utah Valley University, there was a school shooting at Evergreen High School in Colorado. And this should really turn some heads, because South Park creator Trey Parker graduated from Evergreen High School. And just a month before Kirk was shot, South Park aired an episode making fun of Charlie Kirk, where Cartman was master debating and ended up winning a Charlie Kirk Award. But as you can see, this guy graduated from Evergreen High School. So there was a shooting at his alma mater the same day as the Kirk shooting. I pointed out the 88 connection that Charlie has to the Pope earlier, born exactly the 88th prime number of months after Pope Leo. And of course, Leo's birthday is today, September 14th. And it just so happens that the Bears are playing the Lions today. Of course, Leo representing the lion in astrology. Well, the number 88 is also connected to the planet Mercury, as Mercury's magic square is 8 by 8. There are even 88 days in one mercurial orbit. Turning point USA sums to 88. So does the president. Trump equals 88. And Charlie died 88 days after Trump's birthday. Here's a quick look at the magic square of Mercury, which curiously begins with the number 8. But yeah, 8 rows by 8 columns apiece. Another strange synchronicity I wanted to touch on is that the guy that Charlie Kirk was debating at the time the event occurred, there was kind of a mystery as to who this guy was. And it was kind of strange, right? Because he's asking him about mass shooters. And Charlie's last word was literally violence. Well, this YouTube channel got a hold of this guy, Channel 5 News with Andrew Callahan. And it's a pretty big YouTube channel, almost 3.5 million subscribers. But what I thought was so interesting about this is that this guy's name is Hunter Rozak. And I immediately had alarm bells going off because I watched a video recently from this YouTube channel, which gained a lot more fame recently because he got this exclusive interview with Hunter Biden. And there's actually 3 videos on his channel here. The interview, Hunter Biden returns, and then Hunter Biden apologizes. And I just thought how strange that now this guy is interviewing another Hunter who was talking to Charlie Kirk while Charlie was being hunted. This guy's name, Hunter Rozak, has some matching numbers with Charlie Kirk and Gematria as well. But what really connects Charlie Kirk to the Biden family is the fact that his wife, Erica, was born on the date November 20th. That means that she shares a birthday with the former president, Joe Biden. In fact, Joe Biden was exactly 46 years old when Erica was born. And of course, Biden is the 46th U.S. president and the first Catholic president, Catholic equals 46, since JFK was assassinated. Hunter Biden, 218 days after his birthday when Kirk was shot. That matches Turning Point USA. The word death, the word moon, also 218. Now, this is kind of going back a ways, but a couple of years ago, I made this video explaining how Hunter Biden was a skull and bones riddle. And this was confirmed after he was arrested on the 14th of September in 2023. Skull and Crossbones 223, Skull and Bones 149, like the date the 14th of September. And in this video, I also explain how this is all connected to Hunter S. Thompson, the famous author, who also had a lot of skull and bones numerology. Hunter Biden was born 32 years, 202 days after Hunter S. Thompson. And now Charlie Kirk was shot 20 years, 203 days after Hunter S. Thompson. The author's name equals 225 like the year. In fact, Hunter Thompson died on 2/20/05, syncing up perfectly with the value of his name. And now Charlie Kirk is killed in the year 2025 on the 10th of September, or 10/9. And the name Kirk, 109, just like Hunter Stockton Thompson, which also equals 109. Thompson's full name also equals 323, and Yale University is currently 323 years old. So I don't want to waste too much time on this element, but it did strike me as odd that we had this synchronicity with a guy named Hunter talking to Charlie at the time that he was hunted down. Hunter S. Thompson also has some matching numbers with Charlie James Kirk. Kirk was killed 72 days before his wife's birthday, also Joe Biden's birthday. And the 88 connection also goes through this. Thompson was 88 days after his birthday when Charlie was born and would have been 88 years old when he died. So let's talk a little bit more about how this all connects to the current president, who was a good friend of Charlie Kirk. These two men were born exactly 47 years and 4 months apart from one another. Of course, Trump also born on the 14th, just like Charlie, just like Pope Leo. 474 matches the name Charles Kirk and the city he was killed in, Orem, Utah, which is another 474. Charles James Kirk and Utah Valley University match ritual sacrifice in reverse Gematria. Now, a big alignment I wanted to share is through the number 289, which I did discuss on Cody's channel as well. But 289 is the ordinal Gematria of Utah Valley University. And this also matches Charlie's favorite football team, the Chicago Bears. 289 in standard. Kirk was 2,890 days old for the September 11th attacks, which he died on the eve of the anniversary of. And look how old Trump was when Charlie was born. 17,289 days. Well, 289 is simply 17 times 17. So here we have the 17 and the 289. Well, when Kirk died, Trump was 28,944 days old. So here you have the 289 and a 44. 17 and 44, numbers found in the gematria of the word kill. And of course, the date of the shooting matches the gematria of kill in all 4 base ciphers: 44, 64, 17, and 28. You know, every month we have a date that lines up with this, and pretty much every month we're decoding a major death connected to the kill code. But pay special attention to the number 64, because Charles James Kirk equals 64. And he was shot 60 weeks and 4 days after Trump was reportedly hit by a bullet in the ear in Pennsylvania. There's more to this connection as well, as these guys were shot a span of 1 year and 60 days apart. The word assassination equals 160. These are also the same 3 digits connecting to the NFL this year. The NFL is in its 106th season. On top of that, Abraham Lincoln was shot 160 years ago. In fact, it was 160 years, 4 months, and 4 weeks. And of course, 16 is 4 times 4. Can we also appreciate the 1984 lunar phases exactly? That matches the 666 mercurial years? Hopefully I don't have to explain too much about the significance of 1984, which is a book by Orwell about a dystopian future. It's just interesting that this alignment exists between the moon and the planet Mercury. Now, Trump, Lincoln, and Kirk are all connected by the 666 code. Charlie Kirk, Abraham Lincoln, Donald Trump, and 666 all equal 60 in reduction. Trump was, of course, the winner of the 60th presidential election last year. Well, if you hunt for the number 666 in the digits of pi, you won't find it until the 2440th digit. And the number 244 is pretty interesting in regards to 666. Because the word satanic equals 244. The number 19 also 244. And the date of his death also had 19 numerology. Charlie Kirk was born 244 days after Lincoln's birthday and 244 days before Trump's birthday. In fact, Trump was born 244 days before Lincoln's birthday. And using capital letters, Abraham Lincoln and Charlie Kirk both equal 244. Measuring between all of these guys' birthdays, we find that Trump was born 123 days after Honest Abe's birthday. Charlie born 123 days after Trump's. Both Abraham Lincoln and Abraham with that 123 Gematria. Now, I've noticed earlier in the chat, a lot of people were talking about William Shatner and Captain Kirk. And you better believe there is a connection here. Now, William Shatner is, of course, the actor who was the first one to portray James T. Kirk in the Star Trek series. And this connects to Charlie very simply, as his middle name was James, just like the Enterprise commander. William Shatner, certainly through no coincidence, has that March 22nd, or 322 birthday. Captain James T. Kirk equals 64 in reduction. Remember, we saw this with Charles James Kirk and the 64 connections with the date and the Trump shooting. Charlie James Kirk and James T. Kirk have a lot of overlap here as well. Notice how Charlie was born 62 years and 206 days after Shatner. These are important numbers to the sacrifice code, 62 and 206. The name James T. Kirk also 910, matching the date September 10th, or 910. There's more connections through the Skull and Bones code. As always, all of my posts are linked down below in the description. But I want to look at a couple of other stories that are relevant to what we're discussing here today. So, as I talked about earlier, the city of Chicago is along the 88th Western Meridian and is a neighbor of the city of Milwaukee, where the 2024 Republican National Convention was. And September 11th, the day after the shooting, is when Donald Trump approved FEMA relief for the Milwaukee floods, which apparently no one has really heard of, except for those maybe in the city and a lot of people who saw my video on what happened to my house during this disaster. But it's absolutely connected. The name Donald summing to 119. So on September 11th, the Green Bay Packers from Wisconsin hosted the Washington Commanders, reminding us of how Trump is the commander-in-chief in Washington. And towards the end of this game, Austin Ekeler tore his Achilles tendon exactly 2 years after former Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles tendon. Ekeler's injury occurred exactly 24 months after Rodgers and 24 years after the 9/11 attacks. Rodgers has that birth numerology of 116, the upside down 9/11 like Packers in reverse. Now again, 9/11 is the 156th prime number, and the word Achilles equals 156. Plain, New York, New York, Washington, and Twin Towers all sharing that 156 value. And there's something going on with the Achilles tendon this year. You may recall that in June, I made a video on the fascinating synchronicity of 3 different superstar NBA players, all wearing the number 0, all who tore their Achilles during the playoffs. But check this out. On the date of Ekeler's injury, Aaron Rodgers was exactly 2,180 weeks old. 218 is the ordinal value of the World Trade Center and Twin Towers with capital letters. Those towers stood in the shape of the number 11 and were destroyed on the 11th of the month in the 11th state. Flight 11 was the first to strike. Well, Aaron Rodgers was 11 years old when Austin Ekeler was born, and their birthdays are 166 days apart. Twin Towers equals 166 in ordinal, and 330 with capitals mixed. Well, when the Twin Towers came down, Austin Ekeler was a span of exactly 330 weeks old. Again, the Twin Towers destroyed 33 years after groundbreaking began for the South Tower. And also look at how old Austin Ekeler was. 11,075 days. Well, it was flights 11 and flight 175 that struck the Twin Towers. And his birthday is even the 17th of May, 175. So again, I did a video on that disaster in New York when Aaron tore his Achilles, and we're seeing the same thing, essentially, exactly 2 years later. And if you want to see something really wild, check out where Austin Ekeler was born. He was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. Lincoln, Nebraska is the same city that Turning Point co-founder Bill Montgomery was born in, named after the assassinated president. Abraham Lincoln and Lincoln, Nebraska with the same gematria. Ekeler was also born 580 days after Charlie Kirk, and the number 58 is very important to the World Trade Center. Twin Towers is 58, like Washington. And of course, those towers, a modern-day recreation of the two towers destroyed on the 9th of Av. Av, of course, the 11th month on the civil calendar. That Jewish holiday is called Tisha B'Av, which sums to 911 in Latin gematria. Don't forget, the other date written 11/9 on the calendar is November 9th, which equals 1109 in Latin. Austin Ekeler was also 117 days after his birthday for this injury. And this is how September 11th used to be written on the Roman calendar, where September was the 7th month, 11/7. In fact, Ekeler was hurt during his 117th career game. And look at Austin's birth numerology. 5 plus 17 plus 95 equals 117. That matches Charlie Kirk's birth numerology. And his name has the same gematria as Achilles tendon. Aaron Rodgers also has this 72 connection to Charlie Kirk. Kirk's co-founder Bill Montgomery, also with a double 72, just like Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers' middle name is Charles. Their birthdays are separated by 316 days. Rodgers and Charles Kirk, both 316 in the same cipher, a number that Ekeler does have. And this 60 and 75 reminded me of something else. The word pinky equals 75 and 60, matching Charlie Kirk in reduction. The word ring also equals 60, and I think pinky ring also equals 60. Now, why in the world am I talking about a pinky? Well, as I've explored, this is all connected to the new king, Charles III, who wears a pinky ring, which is very similar to the one Kirk was wearing when he was shot. You see this ring here on Charles' sausage fingers, as I often say. But there's more to this, because Charlie was shot on the anniversary of the assassination of John the Fearless. And look at this image of John the Fearless. How many old-time portraits do you see where the guy is holding a ring at the center of the image? The ring, right? The pinky ring. And I wasn't really going to talk about this, but this is one of those things that people are talking about in the footage of the shooting. And I don't speculate on the reality of events on this channel anymore, because it doesn't really matter in terms of the decode. The fact is, Charlie was removed from the world stage, and he's not coming back, and in the public conscience, he's gone. But this is one of those things, and I apologize if a lot of you haven't seen the gruesome footage yet, but there's just this awkward phenomenon of his wedding ring moving from his ring finger to his pinky finger, where it appears to stay before it falls off altogether. And, you know, there's various theories on this. You know, some say it was a hinged ring and it got caught on his pinky before it fell off completely. Again, this part is for you guys to speculate on. And this isn't the only weird thing about the footage. I have several questions about what we saw play out on that stage. Just remember, all the world's a stage. And I don't think any of us know the full truth about what's happening. But I just found it rather fascinating that this is at the forefront of what people are discussing when John the Fearless is featured holding this ring, and King Charles famously wears the pinky ring. And it just doesn't seem like a coincidence, because I just did this video about King Charles last week. Charles was, of course, married to Princess Diana. And on the anniversary of Diana's death, we had a 6.0 earthquake on the same day that number 6 in F1 made his first podium appearance. And in this race, an Italian driver crashed into the driver named Charles. They said he was chasing him down, like how the Italian paparazzi was chasing Princess Diana. Princess Diana equals 60, like the magnitude of the earthquake we saw that day. So there's definitely more to this. And I'm only looking at a fraction of what this whole ritual encompasses. So one more thing I wanted to talk about before I signed off today, and thanks to you guys who stuck it out. I understand there were some issues with the audio and perhaps the video of this channel. Again, I'm not at home. I was displaced by the Milwaukee floods that occurred last month. Just a quick update on that. My basement is almost done being rebuilt. They still have to lay some concrete down, but the stairs need to be rebuilt down there. And I can't get any of the HVAC or anything else done until that's taken care of. So this just keeps stretching on. I've been very busy dealing with this, which is why this video is a few days late. But, you know, another strong thanks to everybody who helped out and donated, because insurance did not cover my damages and it pretty much wiped me out. So at least my head is still above water, though. So thanks for all that. Now, as we're talking about the 88th meridian and the state of Wisconsin, and how Wisconsin is synced up to all of this because that's where the Republican National Convention was, it just so happens that the Milwaukee Brewers are the best team in baseball currently. Now, the Milwaukee Brewers just became the first team in the league to reach 90 wins this season. And this is an important number to the Brewers, because in ordinal, Brewers equals 90, just like the moon. In January of this year, Brewers broadcaster Bob Uecker died at the age of 90. Well, in the alphabetic order, Bob Uecker has matching 82 Gematria with Milwaukee Brewers. And the Brewers won this game by a score of 8-2. And the team they defeated in this game was the St. Louis Cardinals, which is the same team the Brewers played against in the 82 World Series. Now, this Brewers game was important for another reason, because Brewers pitcher Quinn Priester broke a record, as the Brewers have now won 15 consecutive games that he's pitched in. And 15 is the 5th triangular number. Quinn was born on the 15th of the month, and his name, Quinn, means 5. This game was even played on September 12th, which was 5 days after the lunar eclipse on September 7th. Now, this all occurred during Brown Lunation 1270, a number I've been talking about throughout this video. And the game was a span of 127 days before the anniversary of Euchre's death. Now, when Euchre passed away, Quinn Priester was exactly 1,270 weeks old. The name Priester equals 47, and Euchre was exactly 4,747 weeks old. The Brewers have now won his last 15 starts and the last 18 games that he has pitched in. Well, 18 is a number connected to the moon, as the 18th tarot card is the moon, and the word moon equals 15 and 150. Notice how Quinn Priester was born during Brown Lunation 961, matching Charlie James Kirk, 961 in Latin. His full name also matches Utah Valley University. And if you're questioning whether or not the Brewers are really connected to the moon, back in 2005, the team's founder purchased the Brewers for $223 million. His name, Mark L. Attanasio, sums to 223, just like the Milwaukee Brewers. And remember, eclipses from the same Saros cycle are separated by 223 lunar phases, which provides a connection to the Hebrew value for the moon, 223. The Brewers got to 90 wins on the date 9/12, and 90 wins equals 9/12. It was also 33 days after the devastating floods in Milwaukee. 90 equals 33. 90 also matches moon with capital letters. And there's just a whole bunch more matching gematria that I had to put in here with the number 90. So again, as always, my blog is linked down below in the description if you want to check out more. Even though I haven't been as active on YouTube because, again, I don't have my whole setup with me. I don't have my mic stand, as this desk doesn't really work with it. But especially over the past week or two, I've been blogging a lot again. So if you don't have this bookmarked and you're still looking for content from me, make sure you always check the blog, because I'm a writer first, more than I am a presenter. I think I do okay on YouTube, but you know, I do live streams because I really don't like video editing. I find it to be rather tedious when I can be spending that time just writing more blog posts and uncovering more fascinating numerology of this matrix that we live in. So that's pretty much going to do it for this video. There are a few things I skipped over, but again, a lot of things we unpacked in my initial video with Cody and AJ. You can find Cody's channel linked down below in the description. And of course, those are a couple of channels that I really enjoy. I had a lot of fun actually last week doing that video, and hope to work with those guys some more in the near future. But for now, it is time for me to sign off. So thanks again for all of the continued love and support the community has given. It's been a blessing to be able to help share this knowledge through the Gematrinator, launched in 2017, and you know, especially over the past couple years, I feel like more and more people are catching on to their coded reality and how these things all play out by the numbers. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Whether you're watching live or archived, do feel free to like, share, subscribe, as the YouTube platform itself does very little to share this type of content, questioning the news, diving into our reality, explaining how all of us are tied by the greater cosmic consciousness, and how there are truly no coincidences in this world. That'll do it. Peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to y'all next time. See ya!